Hello one and all, and welcome back to the channel. And no, unfortunately the title is not clickbait. The rogue is actually getting stealth nerfed in 1D&D, but I don't think the stealth nerf is intentional. In fact, I don't even think that the developers themselves are realizing that the rogue is getting nerfed. So I'm just gonna get straight into it, not to try to build any suspense because there's no point. The thing I'm talking about is quite possibly the most widespread house rule in the world. This house rule is so common that I don't think people even realize they're using it, including the game's writers themselves. And this rule is cunning action as a bonus action. This is not the case in 5th edition, but it will be the case in 1D&D. And this is a massive change for the rogue, even though I guess it's not going to affect most people because they've already been using it this way. The reality is this actually limits the rogue in more ways than you can possibly imagine. And I'll get into that further on in the video. But first, I have to actually prove what I said, that cunning action is not a bonus action, it's an additional action. And to do it, doing that is quite literally as simple as just reading the ability. So there you go, right there on screen, we're gonna read it together. Cunning action. Starting at 2nd level, your quick thinking and agility allow you to move and act quickly. You can take a bonus action on each of your turns in combat. This action can only be used to take the dash, disengage, or hide action. Now, if we assume that you're meant to use this as a bonus action, which I really don't know how you read this text and make that assumption, but let's assume that this is what it says. And I'm going to read it again with that assumption and see if that makes any type of sense at all. Let's take a look. So, starting at 2nd level, your quick thinking and agility allow you to move and act quickly. Okay, cool. You can take a bonus action on each of your turns in combat. I know this. This is how the game works. Everybody gets an action, a bonus action, movement, and a reaction. These are core rules. So if it's telling me this at level 2, I can only assume that the game is telling me that rogues don't have a bonus action until level 2. Is that what that's supposed to mean? Because yes, that could actually happen. There is a D&D rule that states that specific scenarios overrule general rules. So this could be one of those cases, even though that doesn't really make any sense why it would be like this. But let's continue. This action can be used only, pay attention to the word only, to take the dash, disengage, or hide action. So not only are you supposed to get it at level 2, your bonus action that is, you can only use it to dash, disengage, or hide. That does not make any sense. Not any. So now let's try and reading it with the assumption that this is meant to be an additional action. And I'm just gonna replace the word bonus with additional here, so it wouldn't confuse you as much. And let's see if that makes a little bit more sense when I read it. Gonna read it again. Sorry that I'm repeating it so much, but it's important that this gets across properly. So one more time. Starting at 2nd level, your quick thinking and agility allow you to move and act quickly. Okay, I read this a million times already. You can take an additional action on each of your turns in combat. I said I'm gonna replace bonus with additional to avoid confusion. This action can be used only to take the dash, disengage, or hide action. Now, when I replaced the word bonus with additional, suddenly the entirety of the text makes sense, doesn't it? You have an additional action, and this additional action can only be used to dash, disengage, or hide. And what this means is the rogue's action economy actually has an action, a bonus action, a cunning action, movement, and a reaction. And this design, I'm going to show you later on in this video, makes a lot more sense than you might think. And actually moving this to the bonus action makes a lot less sense than you might think. So anyway, why am I so sure that this is the intent and it's not just weird wording? Well, it just so happens that there are other abilities in the game that let you dash or disengage as a bonus action. And here's one of them. I have the spell Expedient Retreat. Right here is the description for Expedient Retreat, and this is what it says. This spell allows you to move at an incredible pace. When you cast the spell, and then as a bonus action on each of your turns until the spell ends, you can take the dash action. And that's it. It specifically says that it's as a bonus action. There's another ability that does this. That's Step of the Wind for the monk. So, Step of the Wind, here's the description for that one, and we're gonna read that together. You can spend one key point to take the disengage or dash action as a bonus action on your turn. And your jump distance is doubled for the turn. Again, there's nothing about how you can take a bonus action on each of your turns or how it can only be used to dash or disengage or hide. So, okay, fair enough. Any other way I can prove that this is meant to be an additional action? Well, yes, two more ways. Number one, there's another spell that uses wording that's very, very similar to Cunning Action, and that spell is Haste, right here. And we're going to focus specifically on the part where it talks about the additional action. Let's take a look. Choose a willing creature that you can see within range. Until the spell ends, the target speed is doubled. It gains +2 to AC, it has advantage on dexterity saving throws, and it gains an additional action on each of its turns. This sounds very familiar with the additional action on each of its turns, doesn't it? That action can be used only. This also sounds strikingly familiar to something else I talked about earlier, and that thing is Cunning Action. And then onward it describes what you can do. You can attack once, dash, disengage, hide, or use an object. And that's Haste. And its wording is very similar to Cunning Action, and this is not an accident. This is because Cunning Action and Haste are meant to do the same thing. But if that's not enough proof for you, I have one more thing to show you, and that's the Thief's Fast Hands. So let's read that one and see what that has to say. Starting at 3rd level, you can use the bonus action granted by your Cunning Action to make a dexterity sleight of hand check, use your Thieves' Tools to disarm a trap, open a lock, or take the use an object action. Now, if Cunning Action is meant to use my bonus action, which bonus action is granted to me by Cunning Action that I'm meant to be using with Fast Hands? Because that is extremely confusing to me, and I personally don't understand it. What Fast Hands is meant to be doing is it allows you to use the additional action that Cunning Action gives you to do all of these extra things: sleight of hand checks, use Thieves' Tools to disarm traps or open locks, or use an object. And in One D&D, it's also going to let you use a magic item. Unfortunately, Fast Hands also happens to use the term bonus action in its text, and for some reason, people assume that that means you can just do all those interactions as a bonus action, when again it should be using the word additional. So if we read it that way, let's replace bonus with additional and see if that makes sense in the context of Cunning Action as an additional action. Let's read it again together. Starting at level 3, you can use your additional action granted by your Cunning Action to make a dexterity sleight of hand check, yada yada. I'm not gonna read the whole thing again because it's probably getting annoying at this point. But this, I hope, is enough to demonstrate that Cunning Action was never intended to be your bonus action. This is just something somebody decided at some point, and as I said in my True Strike video, since nobody bothers to read anything, we're here now where this house rule, that Cunning Action is a bonus action, is going to be an official rule. And this is a problem, because the rogue is designed to use things like poison in order to augment its damage. This is why its damage output is typically the lowest out of the entire group. Even in 5th edition, it barely keeps up, because even though 10d6 at level 20 sounds impressive, that actually just amounts to an average of 31. And in 1D&D, you can't even crit with it, or at least unless something's changed from the UA, you can't crit with it, which means your average damage output per single attack plus sneak attack is going to be about 40, which is a far cry from everybody else. Everything just blows it out of the water. Not that much in some cases, but it is the weakest damage output, and I'm not the only one saying this. There are others who've talked about it. But if you can use your bonus action with something like the poisoner feat to poison your weapon before you attack, now suddenly your damage gets augmented and you're no longer behind. This is only possible if your bonus action isn't occupied with something like this, like cunning action. And coincidentally, and this is the other thing that I have a slight problem with in 1D&D, is that steady aim did not change. Steady aim is still the terrible ability that it is, that everybody for some reason really likes. So what does steady aim do? Right here on screen we have it, and we're gonna read it together, and then I'm gonna explain to you why I think this ability is actually terrible. Steady aim, 3rd level rogue feature. As a bonus action, you give yourself advantage on your next attack roll on the current turn. You can use this bonus action only if you haven't moved during this turn, and after you use this bonus action, your speed is 0 until the end of the current turn. This is terrible. And it's terrible because it gives you advantage on a single attack, and that's even if you had multi-attack, you would only get advantage on one of them, on one of your attacks, but also uses your bonus action and reduces your movement speed to 0, which effectively, assuming cunning action was used correctly as an additional action, this effectively removes your cunning action as well. Because to hide, disengage, or dash, you need to have movement. No movement, no dashing, no hiding, no disengaging, because you can't hide after you review your position by attacking. If you don't attack, using this ability is pointless. And you can't dash and disengage. Well, you can disengage if you're not moving, but if you're not gonna move away, why bother? So you use your bonus action to get advantage, you remove your movement so your cunning action can't do anything, and you launch a single attack with your action that has advantage. Effectively, you spend your entire turn to get advantage on a single attack. That is horrible. It is quite literally, in my opinion, one of the worst abilities I have ever seen. It's worse than what people thought True Strike does, because True Strike at least only took your action and concentration. This takes your entire turn just for one attack with advantage, and that's in a game where, I've already said before, generating advantage is trivial. If you want this advantage, just get Magic Initiate for wizards and summon a familiar and have that give you advantage. Don't use steady aim. And I was actually hoping that 1D&D would improve this ability and make it so it either uses only your bonus action or only your movement, where my hope was that it would only use your movement, so you can still poison your weapon if you want to, and you can still use your additional dagger as a soul knife. Although, not gonna talk about the soul knife. The soul knife is improved significantly in 1D&D. I have no complaints about it. My only complaint are these two things. Cunning action is not a bonus action. Don't move it to be a bonus action. That is a mistake. It's a direct nerf to the rogue, and even though people have been doing it for a very long time, it is not a good change. It should not become an official rule just because people can't read. And second, steady aim needs to not end your entire turn. It's not cool. Honestly, if you just took your movement, it would still negate your cunning action, but you would still have a bonus action, like I said, to poison a weapon or do anything else with it that you can't do as a bonus action. And I think that's much better than just ending your entire turn for one attack at advantage. Come on, really? But anyway, rant over. I'm gonna try to end this video on a bit more of a positive note, because aside from these two things that I just talked about, Everything else I saw about the rogue, I'm super impressed with. I'm really, really excited to try the new rogue. The overall design decisions, like adding Vex to the psychic blades, giving them additional range, like a long range, all of that, I'm here for it. Thank you, Wizards of the Coast. It is freaking amazing. But I really hope, and I would actually ask anyone watching this, if you have Twitter, tweet this video at Jeremy Crawford or anyone working on One D&D, and I will probably post it in the comments on their article for the Rogue, because I really think this is an important thing to point out, and I really think that changing it doesn't really add to the game. It takes away something from the rogue's identity. And if you don't believe me, sit down on your next session and try it with cunning action as an additional action, like it was meant to be to begin with. And you will see the difference is night and day. It just opens so many doors for the rogue, and it makes it feel so much more roguish than it does currently, that it will just blow your mind. And as for steady aim, because in One D&D the assassin will be able to move and steady aim at the same time. If they wanted to add that to the assassin, they could very simply allow it to use steady aim as a bonus action and then still be able to move. And so that would also fix a problem where if you move, you can't steady aim as an assassin. You have to first steady aim and then move. But if they were allowed to just use it as a bonus action and ignore all of its other rules, that would solve this problem, still allow assassins to move and steady aim, and allow everybody else to do at least something with their turn other than just get advantage on one single attack. Which, by the way, getting advantage isn't a guaranteed hit. You could miss, and then you've essentially spent your turn doing nothing. And I don't think that's cool. Anyway, as I said, that aside, everything else I saw about the rogue is really amazing. I really hope to see more of this for everything else, and let's try to get the word out there. Hopefully, there's still time, and if Jeremy Crawford and the other guys over at Wizards of the Coast see this video, hopefully they decide to reverse this change and just clarify the language, change the word bonus with additional for both cunning action and fast hands, so that people aren't confused about this anymore, and rogues all around the world can have a much, much better experience. But that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this video helps get this changed. Again, I'm gonna ask you, if you agree or enjoyed it, please tweet this at Jeremy Crawford, and I will post it on their forum and see what comes out of it. And also, if you liked what you just saw, like, subscribe, do the whole shtick. So, future me here, while I was editing the video, I realized I never actually explained the impact this had on the game. The cunning action is bonus action thing, I mean. So I decided to think of it as a bonus scene at the end of the video where I explain this. I'm going to try to be brief, but people that have seen this channel already know what my version of brief is. So anyway, some of the impact that this has had, you can actually see it in various streams that stream D&D, where rogues would often use their bonus action for something, and then the DMs would allow them to hide anyway just by moving behind something and rolling a stealth check. This is a house rule that's meant to fix the house rule of cunning action as a bonus action, and it exists because players and DMs realize that if you have to use your bonus action to use cunning action, that is extremely limiting to the rogue as a playstyle, and you can't really do anything too roguish if you want to also deal damage. But there's also additional issues that this creates. I already talked about poisoning your weapon, and the way this scenario plays out is normally you would be poisoning arrows, and if you're hiding, you would get advantage from hiding. You would use your bonus action with the poisoner feat to poison an arrow, and then you will shoot somebody and slip back into the shadows, thus generating advantage and never needing to use steady aim. And that's another rogue specific playstyle. You can't do that as a ranger or any of the other classes unless you have some additional feature that would allow you to do that. But if you have a bonus action cunning action, that doesn't work anymore. You can still attack from shadows, but you can't poison your weapon, and this has caused poisons to not really be that popular among rogues, even though a lot of the reason they exist is for the rogues. And lastly, subclasses like the soul knife can actually forget about ever feeling like a rogue, because the soul knife, the way it's designed, and the reason its weapons, its special class specific weapons, the soul knives, don't scale overall during the game, is because the way they're designed is the offhand weapon that you are able to throw every time you attack is meant to supplement your damage to the point where it is very similar, if not identical in some cases, to, for example, wielding a +3 dagger or 2+3 daggers if you're using fighting styles with the Soul Knife Rogue, which is something I was gonna actually address, that I wished the rogues would get fighting styles. However, since fighting styles apparently in 1D&D are now feats, that's no longer relevant, and I've removed it from my notebook, if you will. But anyway, as I was saying, if a soul knife wants to not lose out on damage in the long run and not feel like the least powerful party member in terms of combat, they have to forget about being a rogue in combat. You cannot hide as a soul knife and not lose damage. All of these impacts that cunning action as a bonus action has are overall only contributing to make the rogue feel less like a rogue and more like a lock-picking bot that sometimes throws a weapon and then just sits there for the entire turn. No, I'm not gonna stop taking shots at steady aim, and they are steadily aimed shots, mind. But anyway, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, all of that stuff, and that's all I got. See you in the next one.